we shall read write variables. Then we shall introduce some bug ourselves, and then we shall debug that code. For example, we shall focus on each server command error. So how it can be reproduced. Two cases we shall show. One is like we are misspelling, or that variables does not exist in PLC. Another case we shall show, for example, we have number of array in PLC, but by mistake HMI is assumed that we have another number of array. So how that is debugged, that two cases we shall solve. Here there's two cases that we have been talking. So for example, we have a variable door at home, and in our JavaScript code we have written like door at home, and the only difference is actually capital A and small a. So small a is wrong, but we should have used capital A, but by mistake we are using small a, and that cause problem. So that we shall debug. And then another case we just mentioned, that we have an array in PLC, and that is 3 items. But let's say later PLC developer introduced like 4 items. Now we have 3 items, that is index 0, 1, 2, and now PLC developer has introduced 4 items, and then we are trying to use that JavaScript code, and how it will fail, that we are going to show. But of course we can know that length of that array beforehand, and then we can do appropriately. In both cases we get 3005. How we debug that code, that we are going to show. Before starting, let's talk about that sample that we are going to show. Here we can download that sample that we are going to use, and to understand this sample we need to understand a little bit about JavaScript code. And that JavaScript code, we have a good example how we are making asynchronous call as a synchronous call. Those has been explained quite well in this page. For that purpose, let's start. I show this program that is here. We have very simple program, and motor status, and then door at home. As we see, it is capital A. The program, what it does, if those value are true, then motor output can be written true. And then we have this array, machine array, and we have 3 items, and we shall set target speed to all as 25. Now let's take a look in this HMI, and we have a desktop view, and let's take a look that in that desktop view. Yeah, so here is the desktop view, and as usual we have some code behind file, and in that code behind file we have these two functions, read from server and write to server. Those are described here, but okay, this name is little bit different, but it does not matter. And these two functions will be reused from, for example, from behind this button. Okay, let's run this program. As we see, this motor status is true, and door at home is true, and motor output is false. And then this machine 1, 2, 3, target speed as 1, 2, and so on. And now let's run this, and we can open this. Okay, let's make it like this, and we can go to that console. And now if we press set motor output, let's take a look here. We have this JavaScript code that we have written. So basically we are checking if the door at home and motor status, if both are true, then only then we are allowed to write motor output to true. So motor will start, for example. But those are not shown here. So, and from this console we can see, and it's wrote successfully, and yeah. So, and then so we can clean by this. We can take a look in this PLC, and then this mesh motor output has been true because we wrote true. Now we are going to press on this button and all this speed will be 25. Yeah, now all those speed are 25, and by this we can press set to default, and it means like it will set to that original. So we can do that test again, and we can set speed to 25. So that sounds like it works. So now let's introduce a bug. So if we go to that code between this behind the button and press on this bolt, and now if we press, and now we have capital A, and now I introduce a mistake, and we put set motor output to true, and that false did not change to true, and we have that error, and that error is visible here, error in read write, and code is 3005. So we have to debug this problem. So how do we debug? First of all, when we are writing or doing something, then always we need to write some console message. So what does it mean? I can show it to you. And if I go to that code behind this button, I have written that something has happened. Also, it is good to write some comment at the beginning that we are calling read write variable, but that is missing. But anyway, so we can have a trace which function we are calling, because we have lots of button, and then it's not easy to trace which function call what. So let's try again. So this bring this debug window for this live view, and also if we are running in Chrome, then F12 will bring these types of debug window. Now let's see that variables. Yeah, it is now false. So I press set motor output, and we get that error code 3005. So we have something from where we can start. So we can press here, and now it goes to that JavaScript function inside this promise, but that is our target, but we have to come back little bit later. So another way from where we are calling, so we know that this is being printed, so we can put a breakpoint at the beginning of this function. So now we can press set motor output. Okay, it has hit that breakpoint, and now we can go step over or step in, and that we are going to show. If we are not sure, then we have to step into, but I know that problem is going here, so I go use step over, and now we have to go in. So now I step into the function, and now this is a asynchronous function, so this resolve will be called when there is no error, and reject will be called when there is an error. So we put a breakpoint in both cases. Then we can press F8 or resume, or we can press on this run button, and now it has hit that, about to go into that reject. And this is like promise function that is developed by JavaScript framework, and TwinCAT has included that framework. So we have to focus on that data is passed with that function when we are trying to read, and if there is nothing error, then this value will be error none, and if there is error, then we get an error code. And here in this window, actually we get more information about what went wrong, details. Then we can see error, symbol not mapped. So symbol not mapped means two things: either we have typed wrongly or the symbol does not exist. What symbol it does not exist? So we can take a look. Okay, door at home, this symbol was not found. So this must be wrong. Either we have written wrong, or in JavaScript or in PLC code there is something wrong. So we have to focus on this. So let's go back to our JavaScript code. And we see that it's small font, and now we make big font, and we can verify that one from PLC code, and it has door at home, A is capital. So we have a mistake, so we fix it, and then let's run it. Set motor output. Okay, now we can remove this breakpoint, and it has been set to true. And now we can put it, we remove this breakpoint, and now set motor output, and it is true. And now set to default value, now it is false. Okay, so that is clear. So the summary of this is that we cannot spell wrong. We should type that variable name as it is in PLC. This is like door at home and door at home, those are correct. So now it is working. Now let's take a look about this motor speed. So like we said, there are 3 motor in that PLC program, and we are going to set this target speed by this button, set all target speed 25. So this is again hypothetical case, but I think it explains the basics of this debugging. We press this, now it has 1, and we press set all target to 25. Index 0 has 25, index 2 has 25, and index 3, so I think all are 25, and set to default, and now it has been set to all. And now let's do some modification in PLC code. So like we said, PLC developer has introduced new requirements, but HMI developer has not been followed that. So what will happen? So now we build after changing. So we just, for simplicity, we just used 1 2 3 4. Okay, so now this program is running, and we can log in, and we can see there are 4 variables. And now let's try to test this same program that we used previously. We run this live view. Well, good to bring this, we make it like this so we can see those value. And now set all motor speed to 25. Okay, now we see again we get this error code 3005. So error in read write, and the value is 3005. Okay, so let's debug again. Yeah, like we had previously, we had 3 variables, so we pushed 3 items. We have 4 items in PLC, but we are still doing that 3, so that is that reason. But since this is known case for us, so we know that. But if we did not know, how would we debug this case? So at least from that console, if I press here, then I see that this is being printed. So that means something wrong in this function. So best, again I put a breakpoint, and then I press set target speed 25, and it has hit that breakpoint. And now I see, now this has 4, but since it has been introduced later, but we are adding 3. So, and now if we go to that, inside that write to server, and then we have this, again we put a breakpoint in this resolve case, and like resolve means like if there is no error, then it will resolve with error none, and if there is an error, then that error code will be passed, and in this case error code is 3005. It's something like we are user command error, so we are putting some wrong value to this x function. So now again we run this, and we got that breakpoint has hit, and it has this 3005. And again we go to that data details, error, no value given for element 3 of dimension 0. It means like, yeah, it is telling, okay, item 3 we have not given any value in our JavaScript code. Okay, so let's give that value in our JavaScript code. So it was complaining that we are not adding last element, or that fourth element, fourth element. So I add 1 more, so now we have 4, and that is messing to PLC, and that's interesting now. And we run that same function again. Again I press set all target speed 25, and still it does not work. So now again we have to do that debugging, and it's something happening around this, so I put a breakpoint there directly. So again I press, and now I step into, and I put a breakpoint before that reject, and one before that result, and then I press F8 or this resume button, and now we have hit that error code, and still error is 3005. Now let's see what is that error. So invalid range expected 3 got 4. So from where it is coming, that's interesting point. But now we are adding 4 element, and it should work, but still it is not working. If you go to our mapping file where we have mapped those variables, those are normally stored in this file, server TCH HMI server file, and that is like a config file that when we are mapping, those information are stored here. So we just take a look, just out of curiosity we can take a look, and if we search with machine, if we search with machine, then we come here, and here you see that old information is available here, though we are adding 3, but that's not working because in this file, when we mapped this variable, machine variable, from PLC, then it was written 3, and after that we did not remap, so old information is here, and that is the reason why it is not working. By the way, we should not modify this file manually, but for example I should not type it 3, and better way that framework should do that. We have to go to that mapping process, all symbol ads plc main machine, and that is like now we do unmapped and we do map, and now we can take a look that same file again. Now we have 0 to 3, and so now it should work correctly, and let's run that program one more time. Set 25, and now we don't have any error, and all data has been set to 25. As we say, it is 25, 25, 25, 25, and here we don't have any error.